Today, I will be discussing the financial interdependencies between China and the US. I'm going to start by talking about a company called Evergrande. Evergrande is a Chinese company that is embedded across China's financial system and economy, and it relies heavily on property for growth and jobs. It may be the second largest real estate company in the world, but it is number one in debt. Evergrande owes approximately 36 million US dollars, and its residential sales have begun to slow in recent years, causing their debt to increase. So they tried diversifying into other sectors such as electric vehicles, football, and even bottled water. Evergrande employs 200,000 people directly, and they are indirectly responsible for an estimated 3.8 million jobs across the world. An Evergrande collapse would send financial shockwaves across China's real estate sector. Multiple property sector collapses would likely lead to a full-blown national economic crisis. This would mean trouble for the global financial market because several countries rely on financial interdependencies with China. The US depends heavily on China for providing the low-cost goods that enable income-constrained Americans to make ends meet. The US also depends on China to support its own exports. China is America's most rapidly growing export market. Exports to China benefit almost all the US states and the industries in them. Many states also generate substantial economic value from service exports like travel, education, and financial services. The US is China's main source of aircraft, soybeans, motor vehicles, and also microchips. Imports from China account for 18.6% of overall US imports as of 2020. I think it is safe to say that both countries are heavily dependent on the imports and exports given and received from each other. Since the collapse of Evergrande is likely to have an enormous impact on China's economy, there is no doubt that tariffs will be raised on imports from the US to provide the means for an attempt at a rehabilitation of China's real estate market. So effects on the stock market and cryptocurrency exchange. So trade will not be the only sector of interdependence affected by Evergrande's soon-to-be-announced default on their debt. According to reports, major U.S. investment companies and other funds, including BlackRock, UBS, HSBC, and Ashmore Group, hold more than $1.3 billion of Evergrande's international bonds. The stock market has seen a heavy downturn in light of these recent events regarding Evergrande because of the major U.S. companies invested in them. A market closely related to the stock market has seen the biggest impact, however, and that would be cryptocurrency. Crypto has seen a very generous bull market throughout this year that was dependent on the hope that Evergrande would eventually be able to pay off their debt. Last Friday, when Evergrande announced that they possessed insufficient funds to make the minimum payment, crypto saw heavy consequences. This was very bad for a majority of the US population because crypto has seen a surge of new investors this year, as apps like Coinbase have made it possible for the average person to invest. In summary, the true interdependence here is the financial relationship between the US and China. Giant companies in the US have been sending money to Evergrande in hopes of good returns, while Evergrande sends back the promise of growth. However, this interdependence is in jeopardy because Evergrande cannot promise that they can keep up their end of the bargain, which is most likely going to shatter any future investments from their main sponsors. This will most would argue that it already have a negative impact on every investor in the US. All one can do is hope for the best, but at the very least, this situation is going to strain the great financial relationship between the US and China, which will be putting certain interdependencies at risk. Thank you.